Alrighty, so we've wrapped up sophomore year. We are halfway through high school. I wish I could say we're halfway through the book, but if I'm looking at it, nope, no. Um, but that's also in part when I wrote this. I wrote this, yes, covering high school, but there is a a final chapter that I write about, and I will talk more about that when we get to it. This is your this is your tease for months from now, I guess, according to how all these things are lining up. But anyway, uh, if you're watching this and you've made it through 2 years of my life, thank you, and oh my god, uh, you're probably going through a series of why am I still here? Uh, but I appreciate it, and to all the friends who watch this, thank you. I'm still a nerd and a dork, and this part for me, some of my most influential people graduate the year before what I'm going to talk about. Blaine and Pam and Katie, Diana, um, and they they do sprinkle in a little bit because one of the things about choir back in the day is it was this open door policy where you could come back and say hi and we would sing at Christmas, and all that. But they're off growing up. They're off to do the adult things and the college things and everything like that. So it's this now like Jen K and Miriam and Pam and Katie and Diana and Blaine and Eric. Um, you all, if you're watching this, like you get to now see what happened to me when I was not the sophomore kid running around Dalby. Um, the thing about junior year too, as I mentioned in the last video, um, this becomes a bit of a breakout for me. I had mentioned sophomore year being like the most influential, and then I said that this was probably the more fun one. I say that not to say that I didn't have fun sophomore year. This one, though, everything starts to kind of come together. It's one of the things actually I deal with in my work and talking with like high school kids is like junior year just seems to be this one where you're not so senioritis out, but you're not like an underclassman anymore. So it's almost like this like nucleusly interesting year. At least it was for me. So, not sure what I've used for the thumbnail yet, but I'm gonna pop it about here or so. Up picture of me junior year, which haha, yay, I'm finally growing up. Um, but anyway, now that I've rambled for 3 minutes, it's probably time to start actually reading. So, junior year, head over heels. Been running so long, I've nearly lost all track of time. Heading into junior year, I was still in a bit of limbo. But that may sound more negative than it was. Xandar, David, Putman, and I had become a great quartet and evolution of the guides after Blaine's graduation, especially Putman, Zan, and I. We had become closer playing video games and watching movies and had introduced them to painting and more of my miniature stuff. Zan and I had even talked about getting into war games, putting my miniatures to use, but that would come later and more nerdy. However, there was a series of misunderstandings that would pop up during the summer that would at times strain other friendships. One between myself and Blaine, and a group consisting of Meg, Emily, Corey, and a few others. And because things like this can multiply, during another group hangout, at this time an ice skating rink that then turned into a movie night, it also got Xandar and I mistakenly left behind without a ride from the rink to the movie theater. Xandar ended up finding and catching a ride, but me, in my angsty anger, decided that walking was the best course of action. And after about a mile and a half walking across a freeway overpass to find the group at the theater, an immediately apologetic Meg and I skipped the movie to talk things out. Add in a bit of a continual gray area. still in the air from when Meg and I had come back toward the end of summer. We had picked up sort of where we left off. We're not together, but also we're not really seeing other people, and spent a lot of our time together as well. All in all, going into junior year, it would be easy to see why there was just a shit ton of confusion. But what was most important was as the school year itself started and summer angst be damned, my friendships with Meg, Emily, Aaron, Kate, and Corey were all going well. It also looked like my class schedule was shaping up for a fun time. Meg, Corey, and I were in a science class together and would see a lot of each other passing through the hall or at lunch. Katie and I had a cappella and downbeat together. Emily and I not only had downbeat and a cappella together, we had a second year of German together and a 2-hour block at the end of our day called American Studies. Between our 0-hour downbeat, lunch, and 6 possible classes throughout the day, Emily and I were together for all but 2 hours. Putman had joined Zan and I in a cappella, and we all had lunch together, and the guys and I pretty much always planned to hang out after school. Unless any of our female friends we requested to hang out. We were brothers, but we also had priorities. As the year got started and we got settled into choir, there were so many cool things that happened. Firstly, Sarah was now at Mountain Point and part of Encore, along with her best friend Ashley R. Also, a cappella allowed me to get to know people better who were immensely cool. Andrea L., who had been in Shantae the year before as a freshman, came into a cappella, and she was absolutely amazing. Small in stature, something I knew something about from my early choir days, she was a definition of a pocket-sized powerhouse. Kiki was back, which meant more fun stories and great laughs. Sherry S. had made it into a cappella and had known Emily and Crystal from Shantae the year before. And her younger brother Ron, who was already nearly 7 feet tall, were quickly adopted into our group. Mike G. and Scott G. were these guys who seemed like guys you wouldn't think might take choir very seriously, but they were so talented and very approachable, even though I was a target of some of their humor. And Robert M. was talented, lovable bass that everyone just loved to hang around with. As early as some of these first practices in both a cappella and downbeat, one of these things fondly remembered today that I remember was how fucking talented the 2 choirs I was a part of were. Whereas the year before was full of memorable, talented people, and I believed them to be hard to top, it seemed like this group was just going to easily meet it. Whereas downbeat, the previous year, was memorable for the people and, whatever it was that we went through, this downbeat just seemed to have none of those clashes and just felt like all fun people. Wendy had decided to add more songs to our library, and that most of them had a dedicated baritone part, and so she made the official duo to handle any of that to be me and Brian. Brian was actually a tenor, and to this day is probably, still a rock star. And he was the rock star of choir. Brian, naturally being a tenor, was teamed with Steven and Brandon. Brandon, to this day, is probably one of the most talented singers I've ever seen in my life. And Lord, I've done karaoke with the guy, and gosh, talented as hell. And Steven was so underrated, but maybe just derailed by his humor and jokester personality sometimes. Scott, David, and I, we made up the bass section, and out of the 3 of us, David had the lower register. Then Scott and I were comparable. But I had a little bit more of musical theory knowledge. When Wendy explained Brian and I would be handling the baritone work, I was a bit starstruck. I'm not on Brian's level. was my comment one day to David while processing it, and Brian had overheard. You need to give yourself more credit, was his response. You've always been great. Whereas Blaine and I were good together, but also very much about getting a laugh, Brian and I complimented each other as just pure singers. As the year progressed, we had a chance to show that, but from early practices that year, I was humbled to be seen as any sort of near and equal to him. And I made sure to mention that. Brian would smile, shrug his shoulders, and we'd get back to singing. Meanwhile, the girls of Downbeat were just blow the roof off of the place. They were that great. Tamara, Rochelle, Becky, and Kate were the sopranos, while Emily, Tatiana, Liz, and Laura were the altos. Tamara was a born leader and music person, so when you team her with Kate, there is just immense theory talent there. Rochelle, as mentioned before, from freshman year, was a force of gospel, and if Brandon is one of the most talented singers I've ever met, and then a guy, Rochelle is probably the most talented female singer that I had ever heard outside of Diana. Like, holy God. Becky was back, and she's such a steady and powerful voice that sopranos could overpower the choir, but maintained such balance that they didn't. Meanwhile, my favorite section of altos was just wonderful. My love of anything Emily would sing would continue to grow through the year. Laura was always so fun to be around, and Tatiana and Liz, who I would now finally get to know, brought such rich balance and talent voices to the group as well. I've mentioned before about being surrounded by people I thought were out of my league. This was 100% one of those times. And yet, in the back of my head, even my own self-deprecating voice had to shut up from time to time. I would remind myself that I wasn't a charity case, that I had a place amongst these talented people, even if it was to hit the notes as a supporting player. But thanks to 2 years of beginning to feel comfortable in my singing skin, I could feel my confidence growing. And this year, for sure, if I couldn't quiet the doubt myself, my friends would do it for me. Take you through the good times, see you through the bad times. It was early into junior year, and Emily and I were hanging out. And anything weird and strange that may have happened over the summer regarding feelings for her, miscommunications, etc., those were all in the rearview mirror. We were comfortable with what our friendship was, and on an afternoon after school, we were working on homework for German and American studies. As was my usual practice when friends were over or not, I had music playing, and as we sat there, Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now by Starship began to play. You know, I've always liked the movie this was from, I said. You like a romantic movie? Emily asked, smiling. Yeah, okay, a few. Princess Bride is one. Mannequin is another. I then began to sing the song as it played. And as Mickey Thomas's opening part ended, as soon as Grace Slick's part started, Emily joined in. We sang the chorus as a duet and continued trading off the song, her laying across my bed and doing homework, while I sat at my desk. Trading off the remote as a mic, we sang back and forth and together, me still dropping anything out of my range down an octave, and we even got into a little bit of a performance with it toward the end of the song, and with a bit of flirting and exaggerated performance gestures. When we were done, we laughed and went back to doing homework. After a few more hours of hanging out, and she packed up her backpack and headed out, saying goodbye to my folks as she did. I walked her to her car, quick hug and a see you tomorrow exchanged, and she was off. You know, you two sounded really good together, my dad said. Yeah, maybe we'll have to try out something for Pops this year, I responded. We love Emily, my mom added. I know. I do too. Early into junior year, Wendy had told Downbeat of our schedule for NAU Jazz Madrigal competition. Her and I had worked out a second year of Christmas caroling at my mom's work, and another plan for around the holiday would be an event. The Madrigal Dinner, part Renaissance Festival / medieval dinner. Theater. Part concert. Part play. It would have us acting parts out, deliver lines, be in character. Another plan was to be a choir lock-in, with everyone invited from all choirs for an overnight party. There would be chaperones, a sound system set up, and food, but excitement for that grew as we made our way towards it. All this while gearing up for musical choices for the first concert in October meant that even just a few weeks into school, we already had a schedule that was filling out. Singing and choir stuff wasn't the only fun stuff going on. I was making more friends with members of the band. Also, Meg, Corey, and I decided to join one of the school clubs, the environmental club overseen by our science teacher, Mrs. Dutton, which included some of these same people from the band, and I was happy to have a chance to become better friends that year. Eric E. was he was pretty much as close to Spider-Man as you could get. He could climb walls, corner, do backflips, and was just this wildly cool dude. He was Ilea's older brother and was such a nice guy, and while he seemed like a human spider monkey, his girlfriend, at the same time, a senior named Amy, was quieter, but always kind, and seeing the two of them was always a positive on the day. Jackie M., who was 1 year younger than me, was an absolute sweetheart. She was always so positive, and it was always a joy to be around her. I'd always greet her with like a kiss on the hand, old like romantic style, and she would always blush and find it so cool, and would give me such a big hug after I would do that. Eric and Jackie were part of the environmental club, and hanging out with them to do walks or just be around them was the reason why Corey, Meg, and I had joined. As friend groups grew, I also had very specific friendships that I would want to cultivate. As the year started, so did the first of school dances, and though it might have been easy to get caught up in everything going on earlier in the year, homecoming was right around the corner. And when it came to who I was hoping to ask, Meg was still the one taking center stage. Show me where to look. Tell me, will love be there? You ever have one of those things pop up in your life where you realize that even without planning it, you end up in the same place as a lot of people you might know or get to know later? That is the case with the concert. On September 27th, 2000, Meg had, in conversation, mentioned her enjoyment of one of the bands performing, and I asked if she would like to go with me. She said she would love to, and I bought tickets to see Full Devil Jacket, Collective Soul, and Creed at the then and always to me Desert Sky Pavilion. While the music was a bit outside of my usual interest, I was at least familiar with two of the bands. Outside of the Soundbites concert, I'd never really been to like some non-school concert before, so this was a bit outside my usual zone, and Meg drove us out there. When we got there, we ran into like tons of assorted people from school. Like, I remember seeing a Dawn and people from band and a couple people from choir and people from other classes, and we just like before found our seats, I went and bought Emily a shirt from Full Devil Jacket as a gift because she was unable to make the concert with us. When we found our seats, Meg looked over at me with a smile. "These are really good seats," she said. I smiled. "Glad you like them." Because, I'm a dork. The concert, for the most part for me, was only more memorable for seeing the different groupings of people that I knew from school that we'd continue to run into in the audience. But I did at least know a few of the songs. I mean, to be fair, Creed was pretty damn popular at the time, and being part of a packed concert venue, that was more current. Music was a lot of actual fun, and when it was all over, Meg and I got out to her car and headed home. This was a bit of the dance we were doing. Will they or won't they shift? Because we had been friendly all night. Nothing really approaching a date, but also just not approaching a date. Really, it was just kind of hard to navigate sometimes. At any point, if Meg had said that she wanted to get back together, I'd have left it to chance. But I was also trying to keep in mind that it just may not happen. The one thing that didn't happen was we didn't let animosity grow. We were still really good friends, and we just continued to hang out and talk about things and spend time on the phone and try and walk each other through what we might be feeling at the time. We were just open with each other, as open as we could be, I guess. However, on the way back, her car stalled on the freeway. We were close to the off-ramps to get home and got the car safely to the side of the road, but then we had to walk to a payphone where we called her house. Within a few minutes, her dad showed up, and this was the first time I'd ever got a chance to meet him. And we really hit it off. When they dropped me off at home, I thanked them for the ride, and Meg said she'd call me later. Turns out, all it was it seemed that a battery cable had come loose, and it didn't take much to get her car up and running. Later that night, she called me, though, to let me know everything was okay and thank me for the concert. Later that week, and after school, when we met up, I got to ask her the question I had hoped to ask her the night of the concert. Meg, would you go to homecoming with me? I asked. Is this a date? She asked back. I responded, I don't want to pressure you or anything, so it's not a date if you don't want it to be, but I'd like you as my date, if that makes sense. There was a pause that seemed like forever, but really it wasn't. Yes, I would like to go to homecoming with you. I felt relieved, all right? I don't think I had really much to worry about since she gave me a reassuring smile. We agreed on dinner and all the particulars, but this wasn't a promise of anything past that. And I was okay with that, which was a very true statement at the time. Summer had been filled with conversation by phone, email, and in person that came down to this. Again, we did care for each other. There was still some love there. But when it came to a label, like exclusively dating or boyfriend, girlfriend, that kind of thing, we didn't have that. As we geared up for the end of October, with our fall concert, homecoming, and Halloween all coming within really 2 weeks of each other, there was a lot to look forward to again in the early months of the year. But not everything that would be new and exciting would be coming from school. And they would all be something I've carried with me to this day. But when I saw her smile across a crowded room, getting ready for homecoming my junior year was going to be a bit different than my sophomore year. There was no vest, no multi-person plan for dinner. I would dress up a bit, but not to a large extent. I decided to toy with my look a little bit, including instead of my usual blue and white look, I went with all black, with a bit of white in the collar on the overshirt along with the necklace that Meg and I had picked out from tour, another piece of my wardrobe I never really went without since I bought it. The reason the idea of me wearing all black is notable for me is, full disclosure, I've struggled with psoriasis for a large portion of my life, and no one really enjoys flaky scalp, especially teenagers and a teenage kid who had numerous reasons to be picked on. Like height, interests, voice, just all of these. But I did want to attempt to look nice for Meg. And before getting ready to head out with her, I ran into Sarah in the hallway of the townhouse as she got ready. She was going to be meeting up with some friends, and my sister looked adorable. She had her light brown hair and curls, lipstick, heels, a purple dress with floral patterns on it. Looking good there, sister, I said, smiling. Are you meeting up with friends? Yeah, she said, finishing touching up her lipstick. Are you leaving now? Just about. We walked downstairs and were immediately stopped by my parents. They were, of course, complimentary, and Sarah going to her first high school dance was a bit of a moment for everybody. As we stood by the front door, I offered her my arm. She took it, my mom taking the photo. Looking back on it, it's a great photo of us, really. She's mid-laugh, and I'm trying to hold in a laugh, my usual smirk replaced by an actual smile. Sarah then asked to take a photo of me, and if there was a photo of me attempting to look like a brooding 16-year-old, I guess that would be it. Arms crossed, leaning up against the front door with a "why are you taking my photo" look on my face. But it was all in good fun. And it was a photo of me that Sarah actually kept up in her room. When I stepped outside and Meg pulled up, all I could do was smile. My parents saw her from the door and waved as she waved back. I climbed into the car and she again greeted me with a smile, and she was just in this bluish gray almost dress that had this floral print repeating on it and her hair down, and I just couldn't argue that I loved her. I said the first thing that popped into my mind. "You look great, Meg," I said. "So do you," she smiled in return. We arrived at the dance arm in arm and went to go get pictures taken. The theme for the dance was Casablanca, and we ran into a series of our friends as we finished up our picture. Kate was there with her date, Kristen and Aaron, Corey, Eric and Amy, Zan and our friend Sammy had come together. Emily was with Wes, a guy who she dated on and off, and I would actually get to know in the coming year. And suddenly, much like Coronation the year before, a group of us began to throw around the idea of a huge photo, and were joined by others. Stephen, Crystal, Jackie R. from choir, Varen, Heather D., who I would grow to know in the next year as well. Sarah even joined in on the picture. Altogether, a group of 23 of us from all aspects and social circles jumped into a photo together. At the dance, Meg and I spent our slow dances together mostly, while quicker dances were in groups. Emily and I danced together a song. Sarah and her friends decided dancing with her older brother would look weird, and they were off having fun. Corey and I danced together. Aaron and I, of course, did our obligatory swing song. When we all took a break, Corey snapped a photo of me and Meg, her sitting at the table and with some of the star garland around her neck and her hair from the dance, and I'm just standing behind her. I look like an absolute dork, but it's really one of my favorite pictures of her. The big group had split off, and Meg and I danced, and we had fun together. Any sort of talks could wait. I was just happy to have her there, and as the dance came to a close, we walked through the school hand in hand and out to her car. Sarah, Ashley, and the others had left already, and we took a bit of a drive before heading back to the townhouse. "I had a great time tonight," she said. "I'm really glad," I replied. "Hey, whatever goes on, I really enjoy spending time with you," she reinforced. "I know." The thing was, at the time, I was just still feeling, for lack of a better term, stuck. I mean, I knew how I felt about Meg, but I also knew that I wanted to give her the space to, and I would wait to see what she really wanted. She told me not to wait around, but that when she figured things out, she would tell me. I could respect it, even if my heart struggled with hearing it, but we continued to be close. We kissed each other on the cheek goodnight. She said she would call me when she got home, and I watched her drive away. I went inside, and Sarah had changed into pajamas and asked how the night was, and we talked about the dance. I told my parents Meg might call, and when she did, it was a quick conversation, a good night, and that was it. As was the case in a lot of my nights. At that time, I was not in a rush to go to bed. So, with a pair of headphones and a blank piece of paper in front of me, I got settled and started to write. The ghouls all came from their humble abodes. The first concert of the year came on October 19th, just a few days after homecoming. As had become a bit of continuing tradition from the year before, our band and orchestra friends would come to support us. Likewise, when it came to time for their concerts, I'd make sure to be there. And most of the time, I would be joined by some of our choir, as a little choir contingent to back up the band and orchestra. Downbeat performed first, doing our madrigal stuff, and Adoramos Te, which was always the song we used kind of in the first concert, just to see how we all meshed together. And it was great to see how in sync and blending this downbeat was. We took it like a crowbar to a zombie. Just felt like the perfect song and setup for this version of Downbeat. Then we got into more lighthearted fare, and it was a glimpse of the fun that we could have. And it seemed to me also that Wendy had just began to relax a little bit with the choir and getting more at ease with more fun stuff for us to do. The specter of needing to live up to Ludwig was now something that could be less imposing. The October concert was also the first time that, outside of being a guest as Centennial Junior High choir members, Sarah and Ashley took the stage in encore. Now, 2 years being removed from chorale myself and being cemented into a cappella and downbeat, I enjoyed watching them perform. You could see where there would or could be some growing pains in that choir, but you could also just scout out who you knew you would have a chance to sing with later and who was going to be these talented new voices in the choir. Part of their performance was singing the spiritual Swing Low Sweet Chariot, and the choir put their all into it, and seeing the smile on the face of my sister and Ashley was all worth it. Choir had clicked for them too. The last song of the concert, the spiritual Wade in the Water, arranged by Moses Hogan and sung by a cappella, was the first holy shit moment of the year when it came to choir for me. Not, oh, that was good, but actually on stage and being part of something that had not only the crowd but us looking at each other, knowing, holy shit, that was good. The solos for the song were just a who's who of some of my favorite people to listen to and new voices that I'd be honored to hear. Emily, Kiki, Laura, Kate, Shell, Tivoli, Tatiana, Tamara, and Meredith G. all did this amazing work, and the applause from the audience and fellow choir was just immediate and well-deserved. After the concert, choir all headed over to Peter Piper Pizza for food and games, just as a celebration for the first concert of the year being done. In pictures published in the choir yearbook at the end of the year, there's pictures of Scott, Mike, and Brian playing air hockey and friends playing video games and eating, and there's even one of me, gun in hand, playing the newest version of the zombie and monster-filled House of the Dead series. While in black and white and pretty washed out, it's a fun picture of me just shooting zombies as my creative mind intended. Toward the end of the party, I had thrown on a black and gray sweater on over my white t-shirt, and Meg, who had come along after the concert, we jumped into a photo booth and took a picture of us framed by a jack-o'-lantern, bats, and a witch flying in some little cute Halloween photo. We printed 2 8x10s of it, and after saying goodnight to friends, left and chatted as we drove. As October came to a close and it was time for Halloween, Crystal threw another Halloween party. The Friday before, of course, which Blaine returned for. And I decided on the perfect costume for me, and it would allow him practice his makeup skills, as he had decided to go into stage theater and movie makeup while studying at MCC. We tore up an old Valentine's Day shirt that said Irresistible, and one of my, admittedly, many, denim-styled overshirts was sacrificed. When we arrived to the party, everyone got a kick out of it as I stumbled out of the car, lurching and moaning. I had fully embraced being a zombie. Crystal snapped a photo as she was taking the photos of everyone's costume that night. Meg and Emily were the first to comment. "This is great. This is just, it's perfect, really," Emily said. "Just be careful when you hug us," Meg added, smiling. Through the rest of the night, we watched a series of horror films, slashers, and ghost stories, but it was here that I learned something new about Meg. As Crystal put on The Exorcist, Meg excused herself from the living room area where we watched movies and played pool and moved to the front room, and I followed her. "Is everything okay?" I asked her. "Yeah, I just don't like the movie or the idea of it. I've never seen it," she responded. "You've never seen it?" "No, and I don't want to." "I could ask him to put something else on, if that would be better." "If they want to watch it, it's fine," she responded. "Okay, well then I'll hang out with you," I said, carefully sitting down on the floor. Really? She asked. Well, yeah. As the night had gone on, I had started to wash off my costume, and by this point I was less of a sticky mess. And thanks to an extra shirt that I had brought and put in Blaine's car, I had changed almost completely back into me. So Meg and I sat out in the front room and talked. We would be joined by others as the night continued on, just going in and out like everybody did at Crystal's parties. As the party started to wind down, we started playing pool and got down to a small group of us. Blaine and Zan had already left, and the idea of going skinny dipping had come up. I did not partake. A lot of the rest of the group did, and I laughed at being the odd man out. I don't think anyone really needs to see me skinny dipping, I said, laughing. Oh, I don't know about that, Kate said, laughing. As everyone maneuvered into towels, I stepped inside, waiting for them, and I sat in the front room as they came in. Kate immediately ran over, sitting on my lap in a towel, and gave me a playful hug. As the rest came in, we all sat and talked, and again it struck me at just how comfortable we were as friends, and how I was still a bit reserved. As everyone dried off and stepped into the bathrooms to change, we began saying our goodnights, and Meg had offered to be my ride. And Blaine had already taken off. I might be naive to say this, I just always saw skinny dipping as something sexual, I said. Not always, Meg responded. Couples may see it that way, but sometimes it's just nice to do. I do get if it's not your thing, though. Were you uncomfortable? I don't think it would be my thing, but no, I wasn't uncomfortable, I responded. Well, that's good. When we got back to my place, we did our routine. A good night, a hug, and I'll call you when I get home. And I watched her drive away. I went upstairs, got settled in to throw on Dawn of the Dead, and shortly after the phone rang. I'm home, I heard Meg's voice. Okay, great, I said. Thanks for hanging out with me during the movie, she replied. Hey, anytime. I get it, it's not everyone's thing, but no way I'd leave you alone. You're very sweet. You want to maybe get lunch tomorrow before you go to work? I'd like that, I said. We hung up, and I hit play on my movie. We would have our lunch at our default go-to, a burger place called Fuddruckers. And when the week kicked off, Halloween at school would be me in a little bit less of a bloodied zombie get-up. As my favorite holiday passed and fall took hold, things would get even more interesting. As Xandar joined me at Fry's, where we would meet a friend who would be in our lives for the next 20 years and counting. And with a single ad in the newspaper and on the radio, an absolute dream concert of mine would be announced that would end my year off with a bang. We don't come alone. We are fire. We are stone. Remember when I said that you would learn how much of a dork I was? This is going to be a bit of it. A few months after working at Fry's, Xandar mentioned he was looking for a job. I mentioned Fry's, and he came and worked with me. We were able to work together, and that work ethic from choir and tech crew we brought with us to Fry's. We would work the same kind of like weekend shifts, trying to spend as much time together as best friends as we could. And sure, maybe, just maybe, we couldn't be around each other all the time of our shifts, but we certainly tried. And as luck would have it, it would be also where we would run into someone who became such an important person to us both over the years. Even if she had come from a rival school. You see, Gabby Kay is this absolutely lovely, feisty, horror movie-loving woman who was 2 years older than us, had just graduated from our rival high school, Desert Vista, and quickly befriended us at the store. She worked in the kids' corner of our Fry store, which was this kind of free service where shoppers could drop off their kids at this little play area in the store, and they could do art and play video games and watch movies. It was this little closed-off glass, mini room that had a video feed that would play throughout the store. And Gabby was just this absolute popular attendant with all the kids and their parents. And I have to be 100% honest. She was, and is, quite stunning. So, once again, Xandar and I could not believe our luck in that we continued to make friends with absolutely cool people, and it didn't take us long to hit everything off. She joined us for a movie night out and got to know Blaine and Putman, and it was no secret that she had the attitude needed for our group, as when we started to cut jokes and we came somewhere close to even catching her with one, she would have a response. "You keep that up and I will kick you in your neck," she said at one time, and we all burst out laughing. "I'm sorry, what?" Putman asked. "I swear to God, I will kick you in your neck," she replied. "Gabby, we love you, but I could wield you like a baseball bat," I returned. "I would like to see you try," she fired back, and in one fell swoop, I lifted her up by her legs across my shoulder and whipped her around. "Oh my God!" she screamed. When I put her down, she laughed and then smacked me. Our team dynamic, her, Zan, and I, would continue for years at Fry's, and working afternoons and weekends was made that much more fun because of Gabby. She also became such an integral part to our group and family as the years went on, and watching her and Zan's bond grow through the years is one I've always been honored to continue to be a part of. Zan and I would undergo another adventure around this time on a day after work that would also add another layer of our bondings and brotherhood. On a Sunday afternoon after getting off from work, I was going to go a few shops down in the shopping center to a store called the Game Depot. It was almost for 2 years now where I was buying my boxes of zombies and paints. And I asked if Zan wanted to come with. I was a regular there, going every couple of weeks. Zan was into games like Magic the Gathering, Dungeons and Dragons, and there were other things that he had interest in. So when we got there, the tables in the store had all been set up with some ruined buildings, and there were about 6 people standing around playing a game. With nowhere to go right off of the bat, Zan and I stopped to watch. "What game is this?" I asked, watching. "It's called Mordheim," one of the players said. "Are you guys here every week?" Zan asked. "Yeah, we run a campaign. We get here at noon, we play until 6, long enough to usually get 3 or 4 games in, depending on if we do a giant one with everyone at some point," another added. I looked at the walls, and a copy of the game was sitting there. The storyline was that of a town in the human empire of the Warhammer fantasy universe had been decimated by a twin-tail comet, and now bands of scavengers invaded the town to take pieces of the glowing meteor for money, spells, or other personal means of wealth. Zan and I looked it over and decided to pool our money, buying it outright. "We work down here at Fry's, but do you guys mind if we join you?" I asked. "The more the merrier," was the response. "Come in next week. We'll help you guys get a couple of games in. If you read the rules, come up with a warband, play each other once or twice for the experience. We'll honor it, and then we'll get you playing." "Thanks a lot," was our joint response, and Zan and I were out the door. For the next week, we pored over the rulebook. Xandar is amazing and just learns and understands rules quickly, and he got through the rulebook in about a day. I was the modeler/painter, putting together the models after school one day as Zan read the rulebook aloud, allowing me to catch up. The next week, we showed up with our warbands. I played the undead, while Zan had decided on the Cult of Possessed, a group of magic and horror-based cultists who had their own possessed monsters. Xandar was a genius at making up combinations and tactics that would win him game after game. I, on the other hand, I was a good spoiler. I could take a beating, but come up with dice rolls that would win just when I needed them to, all the while learning more of the game and collecting the models and planning warbands. When Zan and I would face off in our group, it nearly always ended the same way. He would win, but I would make him work for it. Mordheim, and by proxy of that, my growing miniature collection and painting, would grow to include Putman. For over 25 years, we've continued to make time to enter Mordheim, City of the Damned. and we love every round. I almost wrapped this up, and then, dogs and stuff. So this is going to be one of those editing points, on the video. And it's all for the wrap up. So anyway, so that's the start of junior year, which I read with such excitement because it was such an exciting point in my life at times. But also, this wrap up at the end with the wargaming and everything like that. It is this weird thing of like this point in my life, I remember and have just evidence of it being so zombie centric. Which is why like I wore this. Part of the fun of doing these videos is I love to put things in them where it interacts with what I am talking about. It's a shirt I'm wearing. It's something on the background of this. It's the pictures. It's something on the wall. And so as a little bit of a spoiler alert, I guess, but not really, because why else would I be doing this if I didn't find things that reminded me of high school? I was very prolific in my zombie writing at this point. I was writing all the time. I was writing up character ideas, and that actually gets to behind me. I have these 3-ring binders right here. Some of them are a dorky project that'll come about later. But at the end, these multicolor ones right here, those are actually sectioned off by my years in high school and my writings. That's all my zombie work. And what's interesting is I think the red one is freshman and sophomore year, but like the green and black one that's in the middle it's all junior year stuff. I was just writing all of the time. And so like this bit of the story of how I am a zombie for Halloween. I start playing a game where I can use my zombie miniatures. I am owning the crowbar, which, in my teen just weird brain back then, I thought if my parents ever saw that I had a crowbar as a weapon, I hid it between my dresser and my bookshelf because they were side by side. And now the same crowbar from the last episode, I keep. It's in my house under my bed because you never know when the zombies show up. That's the dork I am, and the fun thing is this junior year that dork not only starts to come out more, but he's so empowered, and a bit of that comes in my next video. I say that, and I think I say it multiple times, but like this, looking at this video and building junior year, but this next one, a couple things happen in terms of my self-esteem that build, and as mentioned in one of the chapters I recorded for this one, a concert gets announced. And if you have at all known me musically and have been paying attention to this reading, then you probably have an idea where it's going. And it also ties into how I sign off every video. So until next time, be good to yourself and keep on rolling.